Well, tonight we're going to talk about why does this happen and what can we do to stop this from happening? Well, first, it's so important that we talk about the issues that can cause our money to disappear. So, sometimes what can cause our money is to disappear is actually what we do on Friday as soon as we get our paycheck. So it's so important that sometimes on Friday when we get our paycheck, a lot of people they don't actually log into their bank account and look at how much their paycheck is. A lot of people they don't go ahead and pay their bills as soon as they get paid. So today is Friday and I'm doing this video on a Friday because often, people get paid on Friday, but a mistake that I see that I have done in the past and I see people do is getting paid on Friday and instead of paying their self first and instead of paying their bills, they'll go out and they'll go shopping, they'll go partying, and then they won't pay their bills. But what they'll do after they go out shopping and they'll they're like, "Okay, I need to pay my bills." And then they realize that, "Hey, I spent my money on my rent money, my mortgage money on shopping." So it's so important that on payday we have to make sure that we pay ourselves first and then we make sure we pay our bills because it's so important that we do this because it's so easy that when we get paid on Friday or whatever day you get paid on, often people they'll just swipe their card and they're like some people is like I'll just pay my bills later. And also this can cause a person's credit score to go down because if a person's doing this, it can also cost you to pay your bills late, and then this will make your credit score go down. Another reason that cause people to see their money disappear is that a lot of people as their income increases, so if they get a raise at work, a lot of people they'll go buy a bigger house, they'll go get a bigger car. So this will cause a lot of people money to disappear and it'll cause a lot of people to struggle financially. High interest debt. This will cause us to struggle financially. It's so important that if we have a credit card, you sit down and you look and you print out your credit card statement and look and see how much you're actually paying to interest because I know it sounds so simple, but I'm guilty of this myself. You get off of work, you come home, you'll get a lot of people now they're getting paperless. So a lot of people they don't even look at their credit card statements. And I know that everyone is busy, but it's so important that you actually look at your credit card statement and look and actually see what is my interest rate. And then look and actually see how much is this is going towards interest because we don't want to just continue to give our money away to the credit card companies when we can use that money to invest with, we can use that money to pay down debt. So it's so important that if you have high interest credit card debts or if you have high interest credit card um credit cards that are up in the 20% interest rate, we want to come up with a plan of how we can pay those credit cards off. And then also, another thing is only use credit cards for emergency. For example, if you have a car breakdown, a medical emergency, like if you have to pay for something at the doctor, or if you have like a emergency, toothache, something like that, or a home repair. So only put on your credit card something that you know that you're going to be able to pay off, because I'm guilty of myself. I'll put something on my credit card and then I'll say I'm going to pay it off, and then I really never do. So soon as you charge something, make sure you go ahead and you pay it off before the end of your credit card, before your credit card closes, because we don't want to just keep paying. Because to me, when we have high interest credit cards or high interest loans, we're just giving away money to the credit card companies and to the loan company. Hi, thank you for joining me. And then also, another thing that causes people to their money to disappear is not having a budget. It's so important that we have a budget. What do I mean by this? If you want to go out of town, before you go out of town, you need to have a budget of how much you want to pay for a hotel and how much you don't want to go over before you actually go out of town. So it's so important that, you have a budget. I have my budget journal right here. So every time when I get paid, I write down, well, I make sure I pay my bills. I make sure I pay my bills. And I make sure I pay myself first, because, like I said before, it seems so simple, but it could be so hard because, we're so busy with life, working, raising family. So that's why it's so important that we sit down and look over our finances. And that's another thing that causes people to get in debt and cause people paycheck to disappear, because they actually don't sit down and look at their numbers, look at their bank statements, see what actually I'm spending my money on. So if you want to start seeing more of your money, I would recommend on Fridays when you get paid, write down how much your paycheck is. Also, write down what bills you have to pay for that month, and what bills is actually gonna come out of that paycheck. So I would do this before I spend any, extra money on. I would make sure, my bills is paid first before you spend any money on stuff that you may not need. So before you go shopping, before you do extra activities, just go through and look at your finances, because I did it today, and it's so amazing when you sit down and you go over your finances, cuz it's like something to just click when you're looking at it on paper. Work with you, I can pay their bills. And then also, if you have any high interest debt, like credit cards or loans, think of ways that you can go ahead and pay them off. And then that way you'll have more income to use to invest. So, thank you, everybody,